What's up everyone, welcome back to Lace Up Channel. My name's Mickey. In today's video, I'm gonna show you how to increase both speed and accuracy when picking. So let's get right into it. The first thing I get asked about in any warehouse meeting is speed. How do I increase my speed? My picker picks 1,000 cases a day. I need them to pick 1,400. Well, in my experience, I've only seen two ways to improve speed. The first of which has nothing to do with picking at all. It has to do with replenishment. Replenishment is the biggest driving factor for picking speed you could ever imagine. And my most productive customers, they replenish on a different schedule than they pick and they pack. So what does that mean? That means having two shifts. One shift that does receiving, palletizing, put away, replenishment, cycle counts, and then one shift that does picking. Now this means that by the time the shift of the pickers come in, the replenishments have already been done and you've removed the forklifts from the picking aisle and cleared out the picking floor for the pickers to make them as fast as possible. Now at this point you're like, Mickey, I would love to do replenishment, but I don't have a system that tells me what I need to replenish. Well, that's as simple as printing a report out of your existing ERP that shows you a product and all the orders that it's on for that day. Because that should give you a total quantity. And that total quantity gives you an idea of how many pallets you're gonna need from overstock brought down to picking in order to fulfill those orders. Now, it's not my ideal method. I much prefer having a WMS that tells you exactly what to replenish, where to replenish it from, where to put it. But in a perfect world, everybody would have a WMS, and I know that's not realistic. Nonetheless, replenishments will make you exponentially faster. So now let's get into how to actually improve the picking speed. Assuming that you use a piece of paper to pick and you're picking to a pallet, that means that you're running up and down your picking floor 10 times to pick 10 orders. That's simply because when you pick the pallet, you have to put the first order first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, all the way through 10th. And as you guys know, it's inverse stop order, right? So the first order gets picked last on the pallet, and the last order is the one picked first. Nonetheless, I am not a fan of picking to pallet because it makes everybody in the warehouse so inefficient. So I've seen people address this in two different ways. The first way is they pick to a pallet jack that has 2 pallets atop. And this means that you can pick double the orders going up and down your picking floor as opposed to just doing it once, and you've just cut your picking time in half. Shout out to those pallet jacks, but that's a great way to start. Another way, and perhaps my favorite, and how my biggest distributors are doing it, they don't pick to a pallet at all. They only pick to pallet when they need to fulfill an entire pallet capacity or an entire pallet to a customer. But when picking individual orders, they use a cart. And these carts, at least the ones that I've seen in the ice cream industry, they've got 3 tiers, right? And they've got caged and closing. So once you're done picking a tier, you close the cage and move on to the second, and then move on to the third. Well, the beauty of these carts is that they allow you, with an open face, to pick multiple orders at once. So I've got some ice cream distributors that can pick up to 6 orders onto a single cart. Now at this point, you're like saying, Mickey, I've thought about picking to cart, but I can't do it because my trucks have space constraints and I have to get as much volume onto those trucks as possible. And the only way to do that is pallets. You're right. I've encountered this problem too. Now, in order to remedy this problem, or a workaround, is you pick to cart, but you pack to the pallet. This will allow you to pick multiple orders at the same time to the cart, and then when you go stage, you move the product from the cart and stack it on the pallet. Now sure, here, you're touching product twice, but touching product twice is better than touching it 1 time per order with a pallet jack full of product up and down the warehouse 10 times. It makes absolutely no sense. So again, you're either gonna pick to cart, okay? Or you're gonna pick 2 pallets at once. Those are the 2 ways to actually increase your picking speed by picking multiple orders at once. The third and final way to increase picking speed is to give your pickers a metric. How many cases were picked in the entirety of their picking day? If you have this, you can make a scorecard, put it on the wall, and show them exactly who picks more than others and pay commissions and incentives for people to pick more and more cases. Now, I have customers that have metrics for both picking quantity and picking accuracy. And sure, a WMS helps you come up with this metric, and it helps your pickers become exponentially more effective, but you can decipher what orders were picked by what picker and also what the accuracy was based on what the checker says. Now, this is gonna take some manual computation, but at least you'll be able to come to account that allows you to create this scorecard. So if you have a WMS, you get this scorecard by default. If you don't have a WMS, you have to do it manually. Nonetheless, you need this scorecard to incentivize your pickers to be as accurate, but as productive as possible. So now we've talked about picking speed. Obviously, this isn't taking account the dynamics of your employees, what their morale is, all of these things, but in terms of just increasing the amount of orders you get out of your warehouse, I guarantee those things will work. I think at this juncture, it's important to talk about accuracy. Accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. Apart from having a WMS, the only way to make your picks exponentially more accurate is you have to have somebody checking the job of the picker. Now, I've seen a checker sit on the dock awaiting for a picker to finalize their picking sequence up and down the picking floor to check the order that they've just picked and give it a check mark. I've also seen other distributors that have the picker fill up the pallet to its entirety and then have the checker check everything that's been packed onto that pallet. Obviously, once the pallet is full, it becomes a little more difficult to validate the quantities because you don't have an insight into the center of the pallet. Nonetheless, being able to spot check the pallet in its entirety is a great way to increase your productivity and your accuracy. This is why I love picking to cart, because when you pick to cart, the checker just has to check what's on the cart, and the cart is way more accessible. It's viewable from 3 dimensions. You can open the face of the cart and check the contents of each level of the cart without any issues, and checking becomes exponentially simpler rather than checking an entire pallet. Now at this point, you're like, Mickey, I can't afford a checker. And I get a lot of people that say this to me. They can't afford a checker, yet they're still complaining about the fact that their customers continue to get the wrong product and you have massive overages and shortages on your truck. Well, I think it's simple. Do the math. Do the math and see what these errors are costing you in terms of customer fines, in terms of fuel, in terms of overall lowered morale for your employees and your customers. What is the cost? I guarantee that cost is less than hiring someone off the street to come and check the inventory on a pallet or cart. So even though the checker is instrumental to ensuring the accuracy of the inventory, the most important thing you could possibly do is implement scanners. Scanners to most people absolutely terrify them. Like, I don't want to do scanners, Mickey. But look, when you scan when receiving, you scan to build pallets, you scan to put away, and you scan to replenish, you save so many more errors when picking. And the funny thing is, I've got some customers that don't even pick with scanners because as long as you replenish with scanners, you know the whereabouts of the product, and all you have to do is tell the picker where to pick it on a piece of paper. Nonetheless, scanning is super important because it ensures that the right product is being moved from bin to bin, but it also ensures that you pick the right product from the right bin. That's gonna decrease the wrong product being picked. Now, it's not necessarily going to increase the probability that the right quantity gets picked because you don't want the picker scanning every single case. I haven't seen one large company that forces the picker to scan every single case. And the evidence to this is you see all big companies using voice pick. In voice pick, it just tells you to pick a quantity. It doesn't tell you to validate every single case that you've just picked, which is why scanning every single case is so counterproductive. So in my experience, you would take a scanner, you would use that scanner to receive, to put away, to replenish, and if you want ultimate accuracy, use the scanner to verify the bin location when grabbing the product from the slot and putting it onto your cart or pallet. So those are a couple ways to make your inventory way more accurate. Now, I don't want to shout out and sell my product, but in general, when you have a WMS, by default, the inventory is accurate because everything is done based on levels, everything is triggered by a task, and the employee, all they have to execute is a set of tasks on their device. And the inventory in a way self-regulates itself, it self-controls itself, and the output of that regulation is that you always know what's on hand, you always have first in, first out on your product, and you can make accurate purchasing decisions from your vendors so that you don't overstock or undersell. So I can't convey the importance of a WMS, but if you don't choose to have one, I hope the other tips in this video help you become more productive. If you enjoyed that video, go down below, give me a comment, tell me your experience. If you want to ask me any questions specifically, write them in the comment. Besides that, like, subscribe. Look forward to seeing you next video. Take care.